Hey there, Horse Center fans. Matt and I are back with another exciting edition of the show. Matt, how about we head down to Hot Springs, Arkansas?
Yeah, it's the place to be. Two big races, are the biggest races of the weekend with big fields.
Yeah, not a lot of racetracks are open right now. Oaklawn Park is the hotbed of American racing. Matt and I are going to preview the mile, the Oaklawn Stakes for 3-year-olds with Arkansas Derby implications. We're going to certainly talk about that Arkansas Derby coming up beginning of May, plus many other big stakes at Oaklawn Park. Watch it all right now. Welcome to another edition of Horse Center, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the terrific pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Shipman. How are you today, Matt?
I am okay, Brian. We got a couple of big races at Oaklawn Park, one for the older male division and one for the 3-year-olds.
Yeah, Matt, definitely Oaklawn Park is the place to be for American racing right now. But first, let me say it's good to see you. I'm not seeing a lot of human beings lately, as I'm sure a lot of us aren't. So it's just good to see you here, even if we're a few miles apart. Matt, let's start with the future. The future right now for horse racing in America, or as far as I want to go out in the future, is the Arkansas Derby. Who knows what happens after that? But we have the Arkansas Derby on May 2, which makes it not too far in the future. And Matt, it's looking like it's going to be the deepest Arkansas Derby field ever. And what I mean by that, folks, of course, is without many places to go now, the Arkansas Derby is the race, is the springtime race. So Matt and I want to talk about that, Matt. And we have to start the Arkansas Derby, as been the case in other years, with Bob Baffert.
Yeah, certainly do. And you were saying with the Arkansas Derby on May 2nd, right now, looking at the names that have been bantered around as possibles for that field, we're looking at 6, 7, 8 horses who have wins on the Kentucky Derby trail if they all show up in the race, $750,000. And for Bob Baffert, as you mentioned, he's talking about two of his big ones in Nadal and Charlatan.
Yeah, and Matt, I really expect horses to show up for this race. I mean, what else is there right now? I mean, you have a horse going well. Yeah, you can put him on the shelf and wait till summer and into the fall. But if you have a horse going well right now, a lot of these horses are lightly raced and really pointed to peak for the first Saturday in May. Arkansas Derby is a great option, if not the only option. Charlatan, Matt, how good has the Son of Spadestown looked in 2 lifetime starts, a sprint and then a mile? Obviously, we've seen what everyone else has seen. Shades of Justify.
Yeah, and recently Baffert went on regular network TV and spouted about the prospects of Charlatan, and he, as much as Baffert likes to talk and likes to be on the camera, he doesn't usually do stuff like that unless he really believes it. So if Charlatan goes in the Arkansas Derby against that field, we'll get an idea of how that lightly raced horse is really.
Yeah, and in some ways it could be tougher than what Justify did, at least early on. Justify in his 3rd lifetime race had the Santa Anita Derby, but that was a short field. He really only had to beat Bolt Doro. Charlatan will have to beat a full field. Now, there is a chance that the Arkansas Derby will be split. I'm not expecting it, but we're waiting to find out if that decision comes through, because we are expecting that many horses, led by a lot of good ones. Charlatan's stablemate is Nadal, Matt, and I like Nadal a lot. Nadal is the son of Blame, who was sprinting early in his career, or at least his first 2 races. But then in the Rebel, he stretched out, Matt, and I thought he was super game.
Yeah, there really is very little you can criticize about what Nadal has done out on the track, and again, for any of the horses in this race, it is a big test. It's not the Kentucky Derby. There aren't going to be 20 horses, but the quality is going to be there.
And the quality will be there as well, Matt, from trainer Brad Cox, red hot trainer Brad Cox, because he's got Wells Bayou really turning a corner here, Matt. We saw how good he looked in winning against non-stakes competition. Then he ran a very game race, went second at Oaklawn Park. But then he came back and threw in a big one at the Louisiana Derby, going to wire. Not only going wire to wire, Matt, but that edition of the Louisiana Derby was a mile and 3/16.
Yeah, again, Brad Cox, quality horses, Wells Bayou, as we said after the Louisiana Derby, shows you what you want to see. Tactical speed, and was able to take that speed for a classic distance of a mile and 3/16.
Yeah, Wells Bayou looks like a horse on the come, Matt, really improving quickly for trainer Brad Cox. And not only would he challenge those Baffert favorites in Charlatan and Nadal in the Arkansas Derby, at least what we expect, folks, to happen in the Arkansas Derby in a few weeks, but he'd also be a pace factor along with the two Baffert favorites. We could probably say the same about the upset winner of the Tampa Bay Derby, Matt. King Guillermo had been running on turf, but he ran a huge race down there at Tampa Bay Downs.
Sure did. Big odds, big race. And after that race, the trainer said they would train up to the Kentucky Derby. Well, it turns out that they are training up to the Arkansas Derby instead. This will certainly be a stern test for King Guillermo, who is a bit of a wild card to me.
Yeah, and Matt, I think myself, as well as many people betting the Arkansas Derby, will once again doubt King Guillermo, maybe not to the extent of his enormous odds in the Tampa Bay Derby, but it'll be tough to back up that performance. But as good as it was, you have to at least consider him, as that was a return to dirt for King Guillermo. The horse he beat, Matt, in the Tampa Bay Derby is a horse I think I'm really going to gravitate towards a little bit in the Arkansas Derby. His name is Sol Volante, and Sol Volante strikes me as the rallier of the bunch. Sol Volante has put up a number of good wins on both turf and dirt. He's had 3 dirt races now where he kicks it in every time. That Sam F. Davis impressed me, man. And for nothing else, at 9 furlongs with a good amount of speed, Sol Volante looks like a horse who can be picking him up in the stretch of the Arkansas Derby.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brian. This looks like he will get a good setup. That Sam F. Davis victory when he beat Independence Hall was an impressive performance for the Patrick Biancone runner, and he'll get a chance to bounce back into the winner's circle in the Arkansas Derby.
Yeah, and I don't really hold too much against him in the Tampa Bay Derby. He was behind so many horses early and kind of weaved his way through, rallied for a decent second there. Who else, Matt? This list in the Arkansas Derby is good now. It's really good now, and it's only probably going to get better. Storm the Court, no one's talking about Storm the Court, the 2-year-old champion who won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Both of his races, he ran 4th and 3rd in his first 2 races, but they were against good horses, and they weren't bad performances at all. I wouldn't sleep on Storm the Court.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Both cases, as you said, they were good performances. I'm not convinced that he was cranked up to 100% fitness at that point, and he again is gonna have really good odds, and I wouldn't dismiss him in this Arkansas Derby.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. I think Storm the Court will be somewhat ignored at the windows. I think Sol Volante might be somewhat ignored at the windows as well. And these horses are coming off losses, folks. That's a really good way to make some money, is find a horse who's coming off a loss or 2, but has reason to get better. Maybe Storm the Court. I think the distance for the Sun of Court Vision will be no problem, 9 furlongs. And I think Matt's right. I think Peter Eurton wasn't cranking him up early, again, hoping to peak on the first Saturday in May, which now will be the Arkansas Derby. Who else, Matt? Silver Prospector, a little in and out maybe, but when he's on, he's run some good races. Kentucky Jockey Club, he beat Tiz the Law last fall. And in the Southwest Stakes, I guess it was, he beat Wells Bayou.
Yeah, on his racing on his home base at Oaklawn Park for trainer Steve Asmussen. You're right. He's a little bit of an in and outer, and of concern. And we'll see. 3 weeks from now. But lately, the Asmussen barn has been ice cold.
Yeah, and that's unusual. Usually, Matt, you're talking about a hot Asmussen barn, but they have been not winning anywhere too much lately. Matt, we just ran down 7 graded stakes winners here. Charlatan, Nadal, Wells Bayou. Charlatan is not a great stakes winner yet, sorry. But he'd probably be the favorite in the race. King Guillermo, Sol Volante, Storm the Court, Silver Prospector. There's going to be many more folks. We're excited. That's our early look at the Arkansas Derby. But Oaklawn Park, I tell you what, Matt, Oaklawn Park has a lot going on over the next 3 or 4 weeks. Let's talk about the 2 very nice stakes races, full fields, good betting races this Saturday at Oaklawn Park. We'll start with the Oaklawn Mile, which is race 9, 1 mile. Say, Matt, for $150,000 and a non-graded stakes race, it doesn't get any better than this.
No kidding, Brian. Originally, I think it was slated for $250, but was one of the races that had a bit of a purse reduction at Oaklawn without casino revenue coming in, and it drew a full field of 14 horses, Brian, and an interesting bunch, like you said. There's some real quality in there, and that quality comes from 3 big names in the older male circuit this year. 2 of them big names as 3-year-olds last year with Tom's d'Etat, Mr. Money, and Improbable from Bob Baffert. And interestingly, no doubt those 3 will be the clear-cut favorites in the race, but they are all making their debuts for 2020, and they're all coming off a 4-5 month layoff.
Yeah, absolutely. It is an interesting handicap race. I tell you what, if this race came up for, say, the Met Mile at Belmont Park, I wouldn't be too upset. It's just a really nice race. Again, 14 horses in here. As Matt's talked about, the 3 favorites, none of them have run this year. But in Tom's d'Etat, I think we have one of the best older males in the country. And in Mr. Money and Improbable, 2 of the top middle distance horses. Remember, Matt, they were second and third choice in the Breeders' Cup dirt mile last fall. Tom's d'Etat, Matt, I was waiting for him to kind of burst onto the scene, the graded grade 1 scene, and he finally did it last fall. His wins here in Kentucky, back-to-back, a sloppy track at Keeneland, but then a fast track at Churchill Downs. It was the Fayette and then the Clark. He put it all together as a 6-year-old. Now the lightly raced 7-year-old is working well for trainer Al Stahl, and I expect big things from Tom's d'Etat.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's always been a horse that I also have liked, Brian, and certainly ended last year in the best form of his career, getting that grade 1 win in the Clark handicap. But here we are, 5 months later. In my mind, he's going to be the favorite. So the question for bettors is what kind of odds are going to be acceptable for you and Tom's d'Etat in this 14 horse field, considering that layoff, considering that he's turning 7 years old, drew a good post, the 3 posts, so should be able to get a good trip. I don't know, Brian, what do you think are the kind of odds that you'd like to see if you're going to make a win bet on the horse?
Well, yeah, this is a race I probably would lean towards exotics. But to tell you the truth, Matt, with 14 horses and some other horses certainly very battleable in here, most notably Mr. Money and Improbable, I think Tom's d'Etat will be battleable in here. I just think he's a little bit better than everybody in the field. I think he can go up to 1.25 miles, but he's 2 for 2, distance of 1 mile. I like his running style. He breaks from post 3. I just like him best. He is my top pick in here, even though he's the favorite. But I don't think he'll be odds on or anything like that in this 14-horse field. He's never been at Oaklawn Park, nor has Mr. Money, who may be the second choice in here. Either him or Improbable, I guess. Mr. Money drew the 2, And Matt, he looked awfully good, winning 4 straight Grade 3 races last summer, winning them easily before a tough loss in the Pennsylvania Derby, and then not his best effort in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile.
Yeah, that winning streak was super impressive for the Brett Calhoun runner. And like you said, in the PA Derby, he lost by a neck, but he certainly did not run his typical kind of race. If you remember, he was a little hard to handle and got out on the front, and just things just didn't go the way they usually do. And then in the Breeders' Cup, I think I chalk his performance up there into, it had been a long campaign for Mr. Money, and it was time to give him a rest. Comes back. Can probably say the same things about Improbable. Improbable also was last seen in that Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and maybe didn't run his best race in there, and is coming back, except Improbable drew the 14 hole in here. Both of them are looking for their first win against older horses, so some similarities there. I'm interested to see how both Mr. Money and Improbable do off the layoff.
Yeah, neither one ran their best race in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, but I think they are better horses than they showed that day. Mr. Money, I think, from the 2-hole will be a little bit more forwardly placed probably than Tom Statot or Improbable, although all three have the ability to stay very close to the lead. There is other speed in here. It looks like cheaper speed, but there's horses who are used to being out on the lead. So it'll be interesting how the three favorites go after things earlier, watch each other a little bit. My guess is Mr. Money is ahead of the other two early. And I think a mile is his best distance. A mile might be Improbable's best distance, Matt. Don't forget, it's almost hard to remember this, but Improbable was the favorite in both the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. That's how well liked this Bob Baffert trained horse is. Like I said, I think those races probably were a little farther than he wants. The 14-hole, not so good, obviously, but on the other hand, he does have experience over this track, and pretty good experience. If you remember, he ran a very good race last year in the Arkansas Derby versus Omaha Beach.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, with the training that Bob Baffert has been putting into Improbable, he was getting him ready to run a big race in here. It was a combination. He had a whole bunch of long works that were reasonably fast, 6 furlongs and 7 furlongs. And then in his most recent work, he put a fast 4 furlong tightener in there. That kind of training pattern for me, from seeing that from Baffert, is a sign that he has this horse ready to run. And when Baffert does that, they can be very dangerous. And I agree with you about the distance, the mile being better for him. The only question is working the trip out from the 14-hole. Drayden Van Dyke is coming from California to ride the horse. So, and maybe because of the post position, you'll get a little bit better odds on that horse than on a Baffert. Before the draw, I expected him to be second choice, but maybe now much closer in price with Mr. Money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mr. Money and Improbable will probably be pretty close. And, all three, you're taking a shot here because all three haven't run this year. But on the other hand, all three are very classy horses, pretty consistent horses, and horses who have been geared up for this time of year. They're ready to run. The Oaklawn Mile might not have been the original destination, but all three are really pointing to this time of year to come out, and I expect all three to show something, at least in this race. After the top three, there's a lot of hard-knocking horses like Pioneer Spirit, Matt, horses like Snapper Sinclair, horses who run a lot of good races and are tough generally in races like this. Races like this usually aren't so good, but two horses you certainly can't throw out on their best, Pioneer Spirit and Snapper Sinclair. But with the pace set up and the way I expect this to be run, I'm really looking at another one as my long shot pick, and he's a New York named Bankit, Matt. He kind of fits that description of coming off a loss. He was bet pretty much in his last race, but it was a sloppy track and he just never really picked it up down the lane. But if you look at his races previously, Bankit should like a mile with pace, and they're good performances. 2 starts back, he really ran a good race in the Razorback.
Yeah, the New York bred is one of 3 in this field from Steve Asmussen, and like you said, Brian, we remember him from last year, a little bit on the Derby Trail. Also, he's run some good races.
Yeah, and again, a mile with speed for a rallying horse, his odds will be up because of the last race, but I don't think he wanted to slop. So Bankit will be my long shot pick and my play with Tom State Tot in the Oaklawn Mile.
Yeah, the only other one that I just want to mention in there is Long Range Toddy, who we are all familiar with from having some wins last year. At that time, those wins were for Steve Asmussen, but now he is running for long shot specialist Dallas Stewart. Can Dallas get him back to his best form? I don't know, but we've seen Dallas Stewart have some bombs hit the board many times before.
Yeah, Long Range Toddy actually won the Rebel last year. I believe he's won another race since. And it makes you think he's not quite the class of the top few, but with a nice win like that over the track, who knows? Matt, what's your pick here?
Like you said, Brian, and I agree with you. I think Tom State Tot is the class of the field, got a good post position draw. I think you might possibly get 5-2 on him. So, but so many question marks with the 3 top choices. Coming off layoffs. Second choice for me is Improbable. If he gets a good trip, he could be super dangerous.
Okay, and as you know, my long shot is Bankit. Now let's go a couple races farther up the scale there at Oaklawn Park. The 11th race is the 9 furlong. Used to be called the Oaklawn Invitational, or 1 year of being called the Oaklawn Invitational. Now I think it's just called the Oaklawn Stakes. We've got a field of 13, I believe, in this one, Matt, and you don't have the stars that the Oaklawn Mile has, but what you have is a really interesting betting race.
Yeah, it certainly is an interesting betting race. 13 horses. We do need to mention that the top 3 finishers in this race get automatic spots into the Arkansas Derby, so that's important for some of them. I think overall, we're not talking about the same kind of horses that we were mentioning when we did our rundown on the Arkansas Derby, but Mr. Bob Baffert is represented.
Yeah, Baffert's represented, and I tell you, just to start, before his last start, 1,000 Words was up among the top-rated 3-year-olds, and I made that mistake myself, having him up high after really game wins in the Los Al Futurity and another stakes. I guess it was the Robert B. Lewis at Santa Anita. Last time, though, he failed as a horse who was liked a lot in the San Felipe. Now, the good news is the horses that beat him, I guess that would be Authentic, Honor AP, and Storm the Court, are all really good horses. But 1,000 Words really didn't do much running and was a well-beaten 4th last time. Despite that, I do expect him to go off as a pretty lukewarm, but a favorite in here.
Yeah, I expect him to be favorite with the Baffert power in there. Again, Baffert has been preparing 1,000 Words for this race in a similar kind of way to what I mentioned with Improbable. A couple of 7 furlong works, and then a couple of 5 furlong works that were faster. I don't know if that's Baffert saying, "Hey, I didn't have 1,000 Words at 100%." In that San Felipe, and I'm not going to let that happen again here.
Well, one thing he also did say, Matt, was he thought 1,000 Words was just too much of a pace factor in that race, too close early to horses who are naturally more speedy than him, and he feels like it'll be beneficial to the horse in the long run to be a little bit off the pace, and I think that's what we'll see in the 9 furlong Oaklawn Stakes. So that'll be interesting. He's my horse to beat in here. I'm not excited about him as the favorite coming off that race where he got beat 11 lengths or so, but certainly you have to give him big respect in here off previous performances and the fact that He's getting class relief, frankly, off of that San Felipe as well. Now, the horse I think that might vie for favoritism actually with him is the hopeful winner, and that's Breaking from the Rail, Basin. Son of Liam's Map has run against nothing but good horses, 4 straight races where he ran against stakes quality horses. He's done well every time. Last time, he wasn't a threatening third. We saw that in the Dow win in the Rebel earlier on in the show. But on the other hand, I like the way he finished it out. He looks like he can handle a fast track, although his last 2 races were in the slop. And there's every reason in the world to believe Basin could move forward off of that first race of the year, the Rebel.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Trained by Asmussen, and we mentioned the fact about how cold that barn has been as of late. He did run into a little bit of traffic in the Rebel. I don't know if it was a significant factor in his third place performance in there. I don't know if 1 1/8 is going to be his best distance in this field. He's breaking from the 1 hole. Typically, his other races, he's been kind of a presser in there. So he'll have to work out a bit of a trip.
Yeah, and like I said, I really do expect them to bet Basin. I think he'll be really vying for favoritism with 1,000 words. So I'm not excited from a betting proposition. But on the other hand, if I had to pick one horse out of this race who can really move forward and become a top-notch 3-year-old, it might very well be Basin. Matt, I've been watching Tayshaun, the number 8 horse. He's a grand-looking son of Twirling Candy. For a while now, he's been running all winter and mixed results. He hasn't really got it done yet in 6 performance, but the last race over a sloppy track at Oaklawn Park. Oaklawn Park's had a lot of sloppy tracks lately, although we should be okay for Saturday for a fast track unless the rain really comes Saturday afternoon there. But Tayshaun just gives me the impression of a good horse wanting to bust out. I have him as the 3rd choice in here. This could be his bust out race under jockey Joel Rosario.
Yeah, it could be, and I agree. I think he's going to take a reasonable amount of action, and 3rd choice sounds good. Trained by Richard Baltus, who's been keeping a string at Oaklawn Park with all the goings on in California. Again, that allowance win on the slop. There's a bunch of horses that have those kind of allowance wins on the slop. He's going to have to show more. I don't know if I'm going to like the odds that he's going to be, keeping that in mind, and his lack of his disappointing performances in those stakes races before, and now he's in a field of 13 here. I've liked the horse before, but I don't know. I'm just not excited about him here. Okay.
I think the 4th choice, and who knows exactly how it's bet, but I expect the Pletcher horse, son of Quality Road, named Farmington Road, to get some play. He's not a horse with a lot of speed, but he's kicked it in and he's rallied in each of his starts. It looks like he's getting better. He won against not much, frankly, at Tampa Bay Downs, and then he ran a pretty good race to rally for 4th in one of the divisions of the Risen Star. 9 furlongs for an improving Pletcher. I think Farmington Road, if you get the odds, might be a horse worth a play in here.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brian. Pletchers are always dangerous. Another one that I'm going to look at is, and I think we'll get pretty good odds, is Mr. Big News for Brett Calhoun. Last seen, he was 5th in the Risen Star. This is a horse that is a late runner, and with this kind of field, maybe he's going to come running in the 9 furlong Oaklawn Stakes.
Yeah, Mr. Big News reminds me a little bit of Farmington Road in some ways in their form. Calhoun likes him. He's one of 2 horses in the race for Calhoun. He's also got Digital, who has some talent and looks good at points during the race, but hasn't quite got it done lately. I wouldn't completely throw out Digital in here from stepping forward. Asmussen's got 2 other horses in here besides Basin. One of them, Shoplifted, who's run some good races, but again, just hasn't looked quite good enough lately. So all of them could be considered. Here's my bomb in here, Matt. I don't know if you paid much attention to this horse, but my bomb in the race is Background. Background was pretty well beaten by Tayshawn last time in allowance race to be third. But I really like Background's first two races of his life. That was his third lifetime race. They came on fast tracks, and the Son of Kozan looked impressive, really rolling down the stretch in his debut in a sprint. And then he won next time out very easily. Last time was slop. He didn't run bad, but I think he might be better than that. I think he might be able to turn the tables on Tayshawn, and I would expect him to be really to see balloons on the odds board. So Background is my bomb of the day in the Oaklawn Stakes.
Yeah, good enough, Brian. Those Sons of Kozan have been doing pretty good things on the track lately.
Yeah, so I'm gonna. It's a pretty wide open race. I'm gonna try Background with a bunch of horses. Just put him in there a little bit, but maybe the thing to do with a horse like this is just about him to win at those odds. How about you, Matt? Who's your top pick in here?
Yeah, I'm gonna my top pick. I'm gonna play around with Mr. Big News for Brett Calhoun.
All right. Well, Matt's horse is going to be double digits, and my horse is going to be even higher. So maybe we'll get lucky and hit a big one in the Oaklawn Stakes. All right, Matt. We ran down the Arkansas Derby in the future, and then of course the Oaklawn Mile and the Oaklawn Stakes on Saturday. But that's far from everything we're excited about though at Oaklawn Park over the next few weeks. In fact, next week we have some good races led by the Apple Blossom, Matt, and I just want to throw some names at you that are pointing for the Apple Blossom currently. Serengeti Empress, Come Dancing is coming back. Come Dancing, remember how good she was in New York last year. Street Band, you always like Street Band, ridden by Sophie Doyle, Matt. Go Google Yourself has just been getting better and better for trainer Paul McGee. Lady Apple didn't run on the slop last time, but she won the Houston Ladies Classic the race before that. Point of Honor, Matt, another horse, another filly with big potential who can run a distance is also coming back. Apple Blossom, next week's going to be a loaded race. I can't wait to handicap and preview that.
Yeah, that sounds like a great field shaping up for that. The older females there.
Absolutely. I'm on Serengeti Empress early, but I think she will go favorite. But with that likely field, I don't think anybody can be too low. The Count Fleet, traditional stakes race as part of the Oaklawn Festival, is also next Saturday. We know Whitmore and Bobby's Wicked One, two really good sprinters, are in that prospective field, Matt. And then looking forward, as we get closer to the Arkansas Derby, we have races like the Fantasy. I think British Idiom and Swiss Skydiver are already on the probables, but I expect more horses to be in there. And then the Oaklawn Handicap, by my standards, could be the best older man in the country, possibly. A lot to be proven yet to see that come true, but he's good. I also like Warrior's Charge a lot, Matt. I think Warrior's Charge is a speed horse with a lot of potential.
Yeah, and you've got other older males in there potentially with big wins recently, like Night Ops and Combatant and possibly Tax.
Yeah, Tax for trainer Danny Cargan was a very good 3-year-old. Won Jim Dandy, I believe, last year. Combatant coming off that Santa Anita handicap. But don't sleep on Warrior's Charge, people. Again, this race is a few weeks off, but Warrior's Charge was so game in holding off Bankit, my long shot pick in the Oaklawn Mile. In the Razorback. And Warrior's Charge, if you remember, ran a very good Preakness too, as a lightly raced horse last summer. Oaklawn Park, Matt, it's the place to be. What do you think?
Yeah, that's for sure. I was glad to hear you say that it doesn't look like there's going to be any rain out there. A nice fair dirt track will make these races even more interesting.
Yeah, and I did look at the weather report before the show, Matt. It's supposed to be very nice there today, Thursday, tomorrow, Friday. There's just a chance of rain Saturday before the rain does come on Sunday. So likely we will have a fast track for these good races on Saturday. Hey, Matt, can I get a parting shot from you?
Yeah, again, everybody, let's make sure that we're staying safe, and that means, you know, you're limiting your contact with everybody out in the outside world. If you go out for a walk with the family, please keep your distance from others. Go for a ride in the car instead. Open up the windows and go for a nice scenic ride. I mean, too many times I've been out and seen people not behaving smartly out there. If we're going to end this sooner than later, everybody has to do their part.
Sage words from my friend Matt Schiffman. Stay healthy, everyone. That's the most important thing. We hope you enjoyed our show here. I think it was an Oaklawn Park Bonanza, both future races and races this coming Saturday. Folks, as always, we appreciate you tuning every week. Stay safe. Hey, if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel here on Horse Racing Nation, please do so. Thanks to our sponsor, the best contest site out there, Derby Wars. Thanks to our producer, the best producer out there, Brett Workman. Folks, we'll see you next week right here on Horse Center.